Welcome back, boys and girls. It's another new video and it's another tactical analysis, as always, with my boy Raj. How you doing, bro?
Yeah, good. I'm excited about this one because I think it came out a bit out of nowhere, so yeah.
Yeah, it's been a busy end of the transfer window, and this is Steven Bergwijn to Spurs. Just before we get into that, let's look at some comments from last week. Dave said tactical analysis of European talent now, as well as the Premier League. You guys keep growing amazing content. Thank you very much, Dave. Anfield Nation said, great video again. You should do player analysis like Van Dijk in this game. So I assume what he means is doing player analysis within a game, which we have actually spoken about as well. So thank you for the comments. Keep them coming. Quick question for this episode is, who do you think has been the best signing of January? Sander Berg should I say, has joined Sheffield United. And there's been a few other deals as well. Bruno Fernandes confirmed his deal to Manchester United. If you haven't watched our video of that, go and watch it after this. There's also an FPL tip in this video as well. But before we get into all of that, let's talk Bergwijn and his traits. Raj, I've done plenty of talking in this intro, so why don't you intro the world on Bergwijn?
So I think Bergwijn is an interesting player, really. I think, obviously, he's primarily been a wide player during his time at PSV. But this season, he's actually had a bit of a slight role change, I think we'll talk about in a bit. I think it's just firstly interesting to take a look at his career trajectory. So he first really broke into the PSV team 2016-17. Came into the team with a few appearances, 2 goals and 2 assists. And that was only in, I think, about 5, 6, 7 appearances. So he's done all right there. That was his little brief stint in. And then 2017-18 is where he really started coming to the fore. 114 minutes per goal or assist, and he got 19 goals and assists. So he really did break through. And that was playing both on the left and on the right wing. And again, 2018-19, he had a very similar season. 14 goals and 12 assists, which then, again, came at quite a fast rate. And again, on the wings. It's this season which has been particularly interesting, I think. He's got his average goals and assists down to a very, very good number. He's on 89 minutes per goal or assist, his best yet. 5 goals and 10 assists already. And that's only in half a season. And he's taken on a bit more of a creative type role. He's played a lot in an attacking midfield position early in the season, behind the young striker Daniel Malen, the ex-Arsenal Academy product, actually. And he then moved into a central striking role, playing in a bit of a false 9 position once Malen actually tore his ACL, so they needed someone to fill that role. So he's actually taken on and increased his versatility this season, which I find very interesting indeed.
I knew you'd come in strong with the stats and facts, so I didn't have to. Thank you for that. Looking at his traits, I think if you've watched plenty of this guy, like we have been, we've literally been researching non-stop. He is a dribble merchant. He gets the ball, he just runs at his man. Over the last 4 seasons in Europe, he's averaging to attempt 15.25 dribbles per game, which is very, very high, considering he has played off the right and the left, and he's played in the number 10, and he's played up front during them seasons. And I think the one thing that really caught my eye about him is he's very Sane-esque, in the sense of that when Sane gets the ball, he has one thought in his mind. He wants to run at his man. I think Bergwijn, in a similar sort of way, and we are going to talk about how he fits in at Spurs, I think that's quite a different trait for a lot of the Spurs forwards that they currently have, is that directness.
So yeah, I think that's an interesting comparison to Sane. I think you're right, he is a bit of a soloist, I'd like to call him. He does like I mean, he does like to go off on his own and do his own thing in terms of dribbling and running at men. I think he's got 2 different little moves that he does, especially when he plays on the left, which is his main position in the last few seasons. He either tries to gain that yard of space and get a shot away, either from long distance or inside the box. And the other thing he does, because he's such a good dribbler and his feet are so quick, he draws a lot of men towards him. And then what he does do, he cuts inside onto his stronger right foot, and then he spreads it across to the other flank. So it's a bit of a switch of play kind of tactic. But it's coming from him dribbling inside and then spraying a pass out to the right-hand side. And often he's assisted doing that. Similarly,
you see with a lot of his goals, a lot of them are, and I'm not comparing him to these players, but it's a little bit Robin Mahrez-esque. He gets it on the left, he'll bring it inside to his right, and he's going for goal. And on the opposite side, when he's played off the right-hand side, he shimmies inside to his left and then brings it back to his right. So he's very, very right-footed, but because of how quick his feet are, as you've mentioned, he's incredibly difficult to get the ball off him when it's on his right foot or when he's shimmying in and out, which is very similar to Robin. Robin had a very similar trait. Once he shifted inside, defenders just couldn't handle it. And I think the two Sane-Robin traits put in one player, I often think Sane's directness is so widthy another new word for you, soloist and Whitley in the same video. He wants to go wide, but I think Bergwijn's ability to come inside is deadly, and also he's very active. He's in the box very often, and again over the last 4 seasons in Europe, he averages 11.25 touches in the box according to Opta, which is extremely high for a wide man. That means he's going to score goals, and I think in a better side, no disrespect to PSV, Spurs will get the ball in the box a lot more for him. I think now that the traits are out of the way, you've got a bit of an idea of what he's like. I think we should look at how he fits in at Spurs, because there's one key trait of his that we haven't spoken about that you've mentioned to me a lot is the counter-attack.
Yeah, definitely. He's a big threat from the counter, and I think that really does come into why Mourinho wants him. And Mourinho, he's become more and more of a counter-attacking manager over the years. We even saw against Liverpool, that was his main tactic, playing the block and then try and spring from there. And they did have some joy from that. I think Bergwijn's going to increase their threat, because what he loves doing is he loves showing for the ball in more central areas. So you're going to have someone, for example, getting the ball into him in a central area, and he's really powerful on the half turn. So he uses that power to spring away from his man. And when he's got open space to attack, that's when you see Steven Bergwijn at his best. Because his choice of pass is almost made for him when he's got space. He doesn't have to think of a more creative pass. He doesn't have to show extreme vision. And that's why he's a lot more threatening on the counter-attack. On the counter-attack, he's effectively the link man between winning the ball back and getting it into the front men. So that's what he'll do. He'll position himself so he then can supply someone in the box.
And I do think Spurs have been missing that. We're going to look at that in a lot more depth on the board, I'm pretty sure. But just before we do, a quick little FPL tip for you. He is 7.5 million. Of course, if you somehow don't know, I bang on about it constantly. I host FPL FY for the Premier League, so I have a lot of the knowledge that you definitely require, and there's a new episode out right now, so go and check that out after you've watched this. But at 7.5 million, I think Bergwijn as a midfielder in the game. We'll also discuss how he might end up playing up front with Kane injured. I think he's a very, very good option for you guys at home, especially considering the other signings made, say Bruno Fernandes might be a little more expensive, and he's a lot cheaper than Son and Ali as well. So if you need a cheap Spurs attacker, it's between him and Moura, and I would argue he's probably a little bit more direct. But let's get to the board, Raj. Raj, you're at the board, and of course with Harry Kane's injury, a lot of Spurs fans wanted a new striker in. They had Fernando Llorente last season, linked to Olivier Giroud, and they have Bergwijn, who predominantly is a winger, but as we've mentioned, he has played up front. How do you think he's going to fit in to this Mourinho system?
Yeah, I know you said Spurs fans have been wanting a striker desperately. I think Bergwijn is actually the more smart long-term solution, because I think he can play instead of Kane, and he can also play with him, and I think that's important, because you're going to have a player rotting on the bench otherwise if you have a pure out-and-out striker, for example like Piontek. I think they've actually gone for the smarter move. So in terms of a Kane solution, I think Lucas Moura has been pretty disappointing as that lone striker from Mourinho. He's had 1 goal and 0 assists in 8 starts as that central man, and I think they definitely need an improvement on the output in that area. So I think a big contributor to Moura playing there has been because he's not very comfortable on the left. So that means Son's had to play on the left. That means Moura's had to play up front. So I think with Bergwijn, I think he is very comfortable on the left. So that's going to actually free up Son to play that central striking role if Mourinho wants to put him there. And I think Son has actually proven in the past he's a very excellent deputy for Kane in that striking role. He's got 20 goals and assists in 23 starts as a central striker since the start of last season. So he's more than adequate there. It's just the problem is Moura can't play on the left. So Son's had to do that role. So Bergwijn can play there, and you've got Son up front. And the other thing is Bergwijn himself this season has shown he can play as a striker. Because as I was mentioned previously, PSV star striker Daniel Malen, he's been out injured. So Bergwijn's had to actually play up front. So he's got 2 options there, Mourinho. And he's done all right there, Bergwijn. He's been a bit more of a creative presence rather than a goal threat.
With Kane at some point going to return, they're going to have to find a way to fit Bergwijn in. And I do think the problem Spurs have is that Ali can't play in a double pivot, and in a diamond he has to play in the tip of the diamond, so someone is missing out somewhere, and that's why I think Bergwijn they need to find a way to get him playing. As you've mentioned, he's played in the number 10 position this season in Europa League, averages 30 successful passes per game, which I actually think is quite high, and he's as a number 10, I think he could be a very dangerous asset, especially because we said, as you said earlier, he is the link man, and not necessarily in an Eriksen way, but he's the link man between getting your team on the counter-attack.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, obviously, you just mentioned Eriksen. He's departed, so you're going to have to fill that role. Obviously, you got Dele Alli. You're going to need an alternative at times for Dele. Obviously, he's had his injury troubles as well. I think the key is now Spurs have got Lo Celso playing in the double pivot. So they've actually got someone to do Eriksen's job, but from a deeper position.
Yeah.
He can progress the play into the final third to someone like Steven Bergwijn. And then I think that's been shown because Lo Celso in the last 2 games, he played the most passes into the attacking third, 23, and the most take-ons and the most chances created versus Norwich. So he's definitely progressing the play both through dribbling, which is something which is pretty unexpected really. He's not a supreme dribbler, but he's also, his passing range is excellent. So you can find Bergwijn in these positions. And as I say, Bergwijn, he's not going to drop deep and come in between the lines. He'll more than likely, he'll pick up the ball in quite high areas and he'll drive at defenders and drive at the back four, mainly on the counter-attack. So regarding Spurs' counter-attack, it's interesting. Spurs actually have the highest percentage of goals from counter-attacks in the whole league.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's interesting, really. They do rely heavily on it, and I think Bergwijn's going to feed into that. As I mentioned in his traits earlier, he's very powerful on the half turn, and so once he's got space on the counter, he'll get past his marker, and then he'll have space to drive at that back four and then pick out a pass or take advantage of that thunderous long shot he's got, because he really has got power. When defenders back off him, it's pretty dangerous.
And then I think the other side of it is, if you look at Jose Mourinho's most successful teams, in particular that Chelsea team in the early days of Robben and Duff on either side, and if you really think, if you cancel out everything you're thinking tactically and you're just thinking what he might want to recreate, like we've seen with him shifting to a back three and pushing Aurier on, like we've seen with the double pivot in midfield, I think Bergwijn one side and Son the other side. You've got 2 wingers who can love to come inside. I mean, if you go play Bergwijn off the left, you've seen Son is very 2-footed, can play off the right and come inside. I think he might be trying to rekindle some sort of old Jose flavour. He's kind of been trying that in his management as well, in his pressers and in his interviews. I think he's trying to rekindle old Jose, and this could be a vehicle towards that.
That's a nice comparison, actually. You
Well,
got Duff. So you got Duff beating people on the outside on the left, and then you had obviously Robben cutting inside from the right. You probably have Bergwijn cutting in from the left, Moura getting on the outside on the right. So it kind of flipped it the other way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Let us know whether you're going to be adding him to your FPL team. You guys in the comments below, let us know who the best January signing has been. Drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you're new. And we'll see you guys very, very soon.